In the vast expanse beyond the observable universe, where 17 galaxies spun in perfect harmony, under divine oversight, the celestial pantheon held court in realms that existed outside the conventional flow of time. These beings had long transcended physical form, their essence flowing through dimensions like liquid starlight, governing cosmic forces, with the casual precision of conductors directing an orchestra. They were ancient beyond human comprehension, having witnessed the birth and death of countless civilizations, the rise and fall of species that had never even dreamed of reaching beyond their own solar systems. At the heart of their domain lay the Vault of Aeonis, a repository hidden in the folds of space-time itself, accessible only through pathways that bent reality into impossible geometries. The vault contained many artifacts of immense power relics, from wars fought before the first stars ignited, but none so carefully guarded as the single item that rested at its very center. The Aegis lance appeared deceptively simple, a sleek shaft of material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, its surface covered in runes that shifted and changed when observed directly, as if the very act of looking upon them altered their meaning. The lance had been forged in an age when gods themselves could fall a weapon designed not to destroy, but to invert, to turn the wielder's enemy's own power against them. It was a concept so dangerous that even the celestial pantheon, in all their vast wisdom and experience, had deemed it too perilous to use. For millennia, it had remained sealed away, its existence known only to the highest echelons of divine hierarchy, spoken of in whispers, during the rare gatherings when the oldest gods convened to discuss matters that could reshape the foundations of reality. The guardians of the vault were beings of pure energy, their consciousness spread across multiple dimensions, simultaneously capable of perceiving threats from angles that defied geometric possibility. They had maintained their vigil for eons, without incident, watching over the lance with the patience that only immortal beings could possess. Nothing in their vast experience had prepared them for what was about to unfold on a small blue planet in one of the outer spiral arms of a relatively young galaxy. Dr. Maya Reyes had spent the better part of 3 years studying the anomalous meteorite fragments scattered across Mongolia's Gobi Desert. At 38, she was considered one of the foremost experts in astrophysics, her work on cosmic ray interactions having earned her recognition from institutions across the globe. But it was the mystery of these particular fragments that had drawn her to this remote corner of Earth, far from the comfortable laboratories and lecture halls of academia. The meteorites were unlike anything in the scientific literature. They exhibited properties that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. They generated their own electromagnetic fields, showed signs of artificial patterning at the molecular level, and most intriguingly, they appeared to be growing. Not in size, but in complexity, as if some dormant process within them was slowly awakening after eons of slumber. Maya's research station was a modest collection of prefabricated modules and scientific equipment powered by solar panels and connected to the outside world through a satellite uplink that functioned sporadically at best. Her team consisted of 3 graduate students, a local guide, and herself. They had been working in isolation for months, carefully cataloging and analyzing each fragment, building a picture of something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the cosmos. The storm came without warning, a wall of sand and wind that seemed to rise from the desert floor itself. Maya had experienced sandstorms before, but this one felt different, charged with an energy that made the hair on her arms stand on end. The sky turned an ominous bronze color, and the air itself seemed to thicken, making each breath a conscious effort. Her instruments went haywire, needles spinning wildly, as if trying to measure forces that existed beyond their designed parameters. When the storm finally passed, it left behind a landscape transformed. The familiar dunes had been reshaped, revealing geological formations that had been buried for millennia. But it was the perfect circle of exposed stone, smooth as glass, and covered in intricate carvings that caught Maya's attention. At its center, barely visible above the newly settled sand, was the tip of something that glinted with an inner light. Maya approached cautiously, her scientific training warring with an inexplicable sense of anticipation that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than rational thought. The exposed tip was clearly artificial, its surface bearing the same impossible runes that adorned the stone circle around it. As she brushed away the sand with careful, reverent movements, more of the object was revealed, a shaft that seemed to extend deep into the earth, its width suggesting something far larger than the simple spear point it initially appeared to be. Her colleagues gathered around as Maya worked, their excitement palpable. This was clearly a discovery of monumental significance, something that would rewrite textbooks and challenge fundamental assumptions about human history. The runes were unlike any writing system ever documented, yet something about them seemed almost familiar, as if they spoke to a part of the human mind that predated language itself. It took the better part of a day to fully excavate the object. The Aegis lance, though Maya could not yet know its name, was nearly 2 meters in length, its surface smooth and unmarked by the millennia it had spent buried in the desert sand. It was lighter than it should have been given its size and warm to the touch despite having been underground for unknown ages. Most remarkably, it seemed to respond to human contact, the runes along its length glowing faintly when touched, pulsing in patterns that suggested some form of communication. Maya lifted the lance from its resting place, her hands instinctively finding the perfect grip points along its shaft. The moment her fingers closed around it, the world changed. A pulse of energy invisible to her companions, but felt in every fiber of her being, rippled outward from the weapon. For an instant, that seemed to stretch into eternity, Maya felt connected to something vast and ancient, a network of forces that spanned the cosmos and bound all things together in patterns of breathtaking complexity. In that moment of contact, knowledge flooded her mind. She understood without knowing how she understood that the fragments she had been studying were not meteorites at all, but beacons placed across the earth in ages past as markers and triggers for this exact moment. She saw glimpses of the celestial pantheon, beings of such power that her human mind could barely comprehend their existence, and she felt their sudden attention turn toward Earth with an intensity that made her soul shiver. Far beyond the reach of human telescopes in the vault of Ionis, alarms began to sound. The guardians, creatures of living energy, who had maintained their watch for countless eons, felt the Aegis lance's awakening like a lightning bolt through their distributed consciousness. The impossibility of what they were sensing momentarily paralyzed them. The lance was supposed to be secure, untouchable, sealed away from any possibility of activation. Yet the energy signature was unmistakable, pulsing with the unique resonance that marked it as one of the most dangerous artifacts ever created. The alert propagated through the divine hierarchy with unprecedented speed. In the halls of the Celestial Summit, where gods debated matters that affected the fate of galaxies, all other business ceased. The lance's activation was not merely a security breach. It was an existential threat to the established order, a wild card that could upset balances that had been maintained since the dawn of time. Maya, unaware of the cosmic upheaval her discovery had triggered, spent the following days in a state of wonder and growing unease. The lance seemed to respond to her thoughts and emotions, its runes shifting and changing in patterns that reflected her mental state. More disturbing were the effects it seemed to have on the world around her. Small tremors in the earth would calm when she held the weapon, satellite reception improved dramatically in her vicinity, and the solar panels powering her research station began operating at efficiency levels that should have been physically impossible. News of her discovery spread despite her attempts to keep it contained within her small team. The internet, with its insatiable hunger for sensation and mystery, seized upon leaked images and preliminary reports. Social media exploded with theories ranging from ancient aliens to government cover-ups, while more serious scientific institutions demanded access to the artifact for study. The Mongolian government, suddenly aware that something of immense value had been discovered within its borders, dispatched officials to assess the situation. Maya found herself caught between her scientific curiosity and a growing sense of responsibility that felt almost supernatural in its intensity. The lance seemed to be teaching her, downloading information directly into her consciousness in ways that bypassed normal sensory channels. She began to understand that she was not just its discoverer, but its chosen custodian, selected by criteria she could not yet comprehend, but felt in her bones to be absolutely correct. The first sign that humanity was not alone in its interest in the lance came 3 days after its discovery. Maya was analyzing spectroscopic data when her instruments detected anomalous energy readings in the upper atmosphere. At first, she assumed it was equipment malfunction, but the patterns were too consistent, too purposeful to be random error. Something was approaching Earth, moving through space in ways that violated every law of physics she had ever studied. The minor elementals sent by the Celestial Council were beings of fire and wind, creatures that existed partially in the physical realm and partially in dimensions beyond human perception. They had been tasked with a simple mission: retrieve the lance and return it to its proper place in the vault. What they encountered instead was a weapon that turned their own essence against them, transforming their elemental fury into harmless light and gentle breezes. Maya witnessed their approach from her research station, watching in amazement as creatures of living flame descended from the sky, only to flicker and fade when they came within a certain distance of the lance. She realized with growing certainty that the weapon was protecting her, or perhaps protecting itself through her. Either way, she was no longer simply an observer of these events, but an active participant in a drama that spanned scales of space and time she had never imagined. The failure of the elementals prompted the Celestial Council to escalate their response. Conceptual avatars were dispatched, next beings that embodied abstract forces like gravity, entropy, and electromagnetic radiation. These were entities that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics within their area of influence, capable of turning matter into energy or reversing the flow of time itself. Yet when they encountered the lance, they found their own power redirected and inverted, becoming trapped in paradoxes of their own making. Maya watched in fascination and growing terror as avatar after avatar attempted to approach her position, only to be repelled or transformed by forces she was only beginning to understand. The lance was not simply a weapon. It was a fundamental reordering of reality itself, a tool that could take any force applied against it and reverse its polarity, turning strength into weakness and power into vulnerability. The world began to take notice as news crews and military units started arriving in the region. The Mongolian government, overwhelmed by the international attention and pressure, found itself hosting an impromptu conference of world leaders, all demanding access to what was clearly the most significant archaeological discovery in human history. Maya found herself at the center of a storm of competing interests, with every major power on Earth suddenly very interested in her well-being and cooperation. The United Nations dispatched a peacekeeping force led by Lieutenant Park, a career military officer with extensive experience in crisis management. Park was skeptical of the more exotic claims surrounding the lance, preferring to focus on the concrete security challenges posed by the international attention. However, his skepticism began to erode as he witnessed firsthand the impossible events occurring around Maya's research station. The final escalation came when the Celestial Council, frustrated by their repeated failures, decided to dispatch a high council of 7 senior deities. These were beings whose power dwarfed that of the elementals and avatars, gods in the truest sense of the word, capable of reshaping reality on galactic scales. Their approach was heralded by atmospheric disturbances that could be detected by every astronomical instrument on Earth, creating aurora displays in regions where they had never been seen before, and causing electronic equipment to malfunction on a global scale. Maya felt their coming long before they arrived, the lance resonating with increasing intensity as these vastly powerful beings drew closer to Earth. She understood with a clarity that transcended rational thought that this would be the decisive confrontation. The gods were coming in force, no longer content to send servants and vassals, but prepared to deal with the situation personally. The seven deities manifested above the Gobi Desert as beings of impossible geometry and blinding radiance, their forms shifting and changing as human perception struggled to process entities that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They spoke in harmonics that resonated through the earth itself, their words carrying the weight of cosmic authority accumulated over eons of unquestioned rule. Maya stood in the center of the stone circle, where she had found the lance, the weapon held firmly in her hands, as forces beyond imagination arrayed themselves against her. The irony was not lost on her that a single human being armed with a weapon she barely understood was about to face beings that had shaped the cosmos itself. Yet, she felt no fear, only a strange sense of rightness, as if this moment had been inevitable since the first star ignited in the darkness of space. The gods' first assault came as a coordinated application of fundamental forces, gravity wells that should have crushed her to nothingness, electromagnetic pulses that should have stopped her heart waves of exotic energy, that should have unraveled the molecular bonds holding her body together. Instead, the lance absorbed these attacks and inverted them, turning crushing gravity into buoyant weightlessness, converting deadly radiation into harmless warmth, transforming destructive energy into the gentle glow that now surrounded Maya like a protective aura. The battle that followed defied description in conventional terms. Reality itself became fluid as the gods unleashed power that could have destroyed solar systems, only to have that power turned back upon them in forms they had never encountered. They found themselves experiencing vulnerability for the first time in their existence, feeling the sting of their own omnipotence reflected and redirected through the lance's impossible mechanisms. As the confrontation reached its peak, with cosmic forces warring against themselves and the fabric of space-time showing signs of strain, Maya made a decision that would echo through the ages. She raised the lance high above her head and spoke words that seemed to come from the weapon itself, declaring in a voice that carried across dimensions that she would not relinquish the artifact, that humanity had as much right to cosmic power as any other species, and that the age of unquestioned divine rule was ending. The seven deities faced with a weapon that could turn their own might against them, and a human being who showed no sign of backing down, were forced to reconsider their approach. The alternative to negotiation was a conflict that could potentially destroy not just Earth, but vast sections of the galaxy, a price that even their cosmic perspective deemed too high to pay for the retrieval of a single artifact. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation left both sides exhausted and sobered by the magnitude of what had nearly occurred. The gods, their forms flickering with the strain of channeling so much power, only to have it inverted against them, withdrew to a safe distance while considering their options. Maya, drained by her role as conduit for forces that no human mind was designed to process, collapsed to her knees in the center of the stone circle, the lance still glowing softly in her trembling hands. It was Lieutenant Park who first approached her in the aftermath, his military training overriding his amazement at what he had witnessed. He found Maya conscious, but disoriented her eyes, holding a depth of knowledge that seemed almost alien in its scope. The lance had changed her in fundamental ways, granting her insights into the nature of reality that would have driven most minds to madness. The Celestial Council, faced with an unprecedented situation, made an equally unprecedented decision. Rather than continue their attempts at forceful retrieval, they would send a single envoy to negotiate. The being they chose was known among their kind as the Light Warden, an entity that had served as mediator in conflicts spanning multiple galaxies. Unlike the raw power of the seven deities, the Light Warden specialized in communication and understanding, capable of taking forms that would not overwhelm human perception. The Light Warden manifested in the form of a tall, androgynous figure, whose features seemed to shift subtly, depending on the angle from which they were viewed. They introduced themselves to Maya as Serene, a name chosen for its human linguistic associations, rather than any connection to their true designation. Serene approached the negotiations with genuine curiosity about humanity, having observed the species from afar, but never having direct contact with their kind. The talks that followed took place amid the wreckage of Maya's research station equipment, scattered and fused by the energies unleashed during the confrontation. Maya, still coming to terms with her new role as humanity's representative in cosmic affairs, found herself discussing terms with a being whose existence spanned multiple realities. Yet, Serene proved to be a surprisingly empathetic negotiator, genuinely interested in understanding human perspectives and motivations. Maya's demands were straightforward, but revolutionary humanity would retain custody of the Lance Earth, would be recognized as a sovereign world with the right to determine its own destiny, and any future divine intervention would require consultation and consent. In return, she offered assurances that the Lance would be used responsibly, that humanity would accept observers to ensure compliance with cosmic law, and that Earth would not use its newfound leverage to threaten other worlds or species. The negotiations stretched over several days, with Serene frequently consulting with the Celestial Council, while Maya found herself speaking for an entire species, despite having no official authority to do so. The weight of responsibility was enormous, yet she felt guided by an understanding that seemed to flow directly from the Lance itself, as if the weapon was designed not just to invert power, but to redistribute it more fairly across the cosmos. The accord they eventually reached was unlike anything in the recorded history of divine-mortal relations. Earth would retain the Lance under joint oversight, with celestial observers integrated subtly into human institutions to monitor its use and provide guidance on cosmic law. In exchange, humanity would be granted a degree of sovereignty unprecedented for a pre-spaceflight species, with protection from interference by other cosmic powers and access to certain technologies that would accelerate their development. The implementation of the agreement began immediately, though much of it remained hidden from the general population of Earth. Governments worldwide found themselves quietly contacted by beings who offered technological solutions to pressing problems while establishing monitoring protocols that would ensure the Lance's power was not abused. The energy crisis began to abate as new forms of clean power were introduced. Medical breakthroughs accelerated at an unprecedented pace, and agricultural techniques improved dramatically. Maya found herself appointed as humanity's custodian of the Aegis, a title that carried no official governmental recognition, but was respected by every major power on Earth. The Lance was housed in a specially constructed facility in the Gobi Desert, a glass sanctum that allowed for both observation and security while maintaining the connection between weapon and custodian. The building itself was a marvel of human and divine engineering, its transparent walls capable of withstanding cosmic forces, while providing complete visibility of the artifact within. As months passed, Earth underwent a subtle but profound transformation. The technological advances brought about by divine guidance solved many of humanity's most pressing problems, but they also created new challenges. Cultural and political tensions rose as traditional power structures were forced to adapt to a world where ultimate authority rested with a single human being, wielding a weapon that could challenge gods. Religious institutions struggled to reconcile their doctrines with the proven existence of cosmic powers, while scientists worked frantically to understand technologies that seemed to operate on principles beyond current human comprehension. Maya spent her days learning to master her new role, guided by the Lance's subtle influence and Serene's patient instruction. She discovered that the weapon was not simply a tool, but a living interface with cosmic forces, capable of teaching its wielder to perceive and manipulate energies that existed beyond the normal spectrum of human experience. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the potential for positive change. The glass sanctum became a pilgrimage site for people from around the world, visitors drawn by curiosity, hope, or simple wonder at humanity's first tangible proof that they were not alone in the universe. Maya would often stand at the observation windows, watching as children pressed their faces against the glass, while adults whispered in languages from every corner of the earth. The lance seemed to respond to their presence, its runes glowing more brightly, when large crowds gathered as if drawing strength from human attention and emotion. On clear nights when the desert sky revealed its full tapestry of stars, Maya would sometimes take the lance from its housing and stand beneath the cosmic display. In those moments, she could feel the attention of the celestial pantheon, no longer hostile, but watchful, curious to see how humanity would handle its newfound power. She sensed other intelligences as well, scattered across the galaxy, species that had heard of Earth's unprecedented situation and were wondering if perhaps the cosmic order might be changing in ways that could benefit them as well. The lance itself had become more than a weapon. It was a symbol of possibility, proof that even the smallest and seemingly weakest could achieve agency in a universe dominated by vast powers. Yet Maya never forgot the price of that agency: constant vigilance against the temptation to misuse power, the responsibility to represent not just humanity, but the principle that strength should serve justice rather than dominance. Standing beneath the stars with the Aegis lance in her hands, Maya Reyes reflected on the journey that had brought her from a simple research dig to custodianship of cosmic forces. The weapon pulsed gently against her palms, its runes shifting in patterns that spoke of potential futures yet to be determined. Above her, 17 galaxies continued their ancient dance under divine oversight. But now, with the knowledge that somewhere among the countless worlds, a small blue planet had proven that the balance of power need not be fixed for all eternity. The gods were no longer the only arbiters of cosmic destiny. Humanity had claimed its place at the table of cosmic powers, not through conquest or supplication, but through the simple act of refusing to surrender what they had rightfully found. The Aegis lance would remain on Earth, a reminder that true power demanded not just strength, but wisdom, not just authority, but accountability, and that the future belonged to those brave enough to seize it, while wise enough to wield it responsibly. In the glass sanctum beneath the desert stars, the lance continued its eternal vigilance, its ancient runes pulsating with the rhythm of cosmic forces. Maya Reyes, custodian of the Aegis, stood guard beside it, knowing that both gods and mortals would continue to watch her every move, that the future of human independence hung in the balance of every decision she made. Yet she felt no fear, only the weight of responsibility and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that humanity had finally taken its first step toward true cosmic citizenship. The weapon that had once been meant to challenge gods had instead become the foundation for a new kind of relationship between the mortal and divine realms. In forcing the celestial pantheon to acknowledge humanity as equals, the lance had accomplished something far more significant than mere military victory. It had proven that power need not flow only from the top down, that even cosmic hierarchies could be changed when confronted with sufficient will and the right leverage. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, Maya allowed herself a moment of wonder at the improbable chain of events that had led to this moment. A storm in the desert, an archaeological discovery, and a moment of contact with forces beyond human understanding had changed everything. The gods were nervous, humanity was empowered, and the future stretched ahead, full of possibilities that had never existed before. The Aegis lance pulsed once more, its light reflecting off the glass walls of its sanctuary, and Maya smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, and new opportunities to prove that power, shared wisely, was power multiplied. Tonight, beneath the watching stars, she was content to stand guard over the weapon that had made humanity's cosmic independence possible, knowing that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when not to use the power one possessed.